Hello and welcome, everyone. We're thrilled to have you to join us for today's webinar on unlocking private fleet efficiency. I'm Kelly McGurk, VP of Marketing at Transforce, and I'll be your host for today's session. If you're here, chances are you're navigating the same set of challenges we're going to impact today: labor shortages, driver turnover, and the daily pressure to keep your fleet moving. We'll explore those headwinds with real data, examine how private fleets like Howmet are addressing them with smart, scalable solutions, and wrap up with a discussion on what it takes to build strategic partnerships that actually move the needle, not just fill seats. Before we get started, I want to run everyone through a bit of housekeeping. This session is being recorded, and all registrants will receive a recording of the video shortly after its conclusion. We'd love to see some audience engagement and encourage you to use the Q&A feature on your screen if you'd like to ask a question at any point throughout the conversation. We'll have a Q&A segment towards the end of the session where we'll answer any questions that you might have during the allotted time, and any other questions we're not able to get to, I will make sure that we follow up on those and get you responses. If you're facing technical issues, there's a few options for troubleshooting listed on the screen provided. And as a reminder, I'll be following up with a copy of this recording along with some additional resources to help you think about moving forward with a more efficient private fleet. Without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce you to today's speakers. Tom Moore has been in the trucking and transportation field for more than 40 years, the last 20 of which have been with the National Private Truck Council, where he manages the group's Certified Transportation Professional Program, the content for the association's annual meeting, and most importantly for today's webcast, he's the chief author and architect of NPTC's benchmarking survey. We also have Todd Henson, Manager of Logistics Services at Howmet Transport Services. Todd has 28 years in the industry, all with Howmet Aerospace and its subsidiaries. He manages the distribution warehouse, corporate transportation and logistics, and fleet operations for Howmet Aerospace, all based in LaPorte, Indiana. And finally, we have Lisa Mitchell, VP of Workforce Management at Transforce, a top woman to watch in transportation as named by the Women in Trucking Association. Lisa has been in the transportation industry for over 2 decades. She's a U.S. military veteran and a pioneer of carrier and driver solutions in the wake of California's AB5 ruling. She's also the leader of Transforce Managed Workforce Practice, and we'll speak more on that later today. Now let's get to the good stuff. Why are you here? We're going to kick this session off looking at the challenges of today's private fleets. Tom will share insights from the annual benchmarking report produced by the NPTC in conjunction with hundreds of private fleets across the nation, and provide us key insights into how private fleets are adapting to overcome these challenges and position themselves for competitive advantage. Todd will talk us through real-world success and how thinking differently at Howmet has allowed them to achieve flexibility and agility needed to succeed in today's freight environment. And finally, we'll leave you with some partnering tips on developing strategic partnerships with third parties, what to do, what to look for, and be wary of. With that, I'm very pleased to introduce Tom Moore, the Executive Vice President of the National Private Trucking Council, to kick us off. Tom?
Thanks so much, Kelly, and welcome to everybody on today's webcast. It's a pleasure to join you today and talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that's aligning the incredible talent we have out there with the amazing opportunities that exist within our industry. I do want to start by painting a little bit of a backdrop in terms of who NPTC is, if you're not familiar with us. We are the national trade association that represents those companies that operate a truck fleet as an extension of their primary business. You'll hear firsthand from Todd a little bit later, a typical example of one of our members. We do this by creating tools, resources, solutions, and various events in which our members can share their best practices in an environment of trust and confidentiality. And Kelly, just a big shout out to you and your team over at Transforce for your support and partnership along the way. As part of what we do host 3 annual meetings a year. We have a number of different forums including Washington reports, also our certification program that you mentioned, and our benchmarking report, which is basically our cornerstone product in which will kind of carry me through the presentation. I'm going to be sharing bits and pieces from this. So let's get started. The number one reason why private fleets exist is to provide exceptional levels of customer service that are not available outside. In so doing, those private fleets account for roughly about half of the truck tonnage and revenue in the United States, according to industry experts. And the primary way private fleets differentiate that service is in attracting, developing, and retaining the right kind of talent behind the wheel and in the back office support functions that help deliver on those promises. However, I will say this, the job, if we could switch to the next slide, please, that job is getting tougher and tougher according to the 122 fleets that responded to our benchmarking survey. And we always ask them to identify what their top issues that they confront are. And the top two out of the top three issues faced by private fleets today are driver-related issues, such as hiring, compliance, retention, safety, compensation, kind of all of that merged in together. And the third leading issue is building a competent back office team to help support those fleet operations. The challenge here is that because of the demand for labor continues to outpace supply, we're not just fighting to compete for talent and to attract new talent, we're actually competing to retain that talent that we have. So it's not easy to make yourself that employer of choice, but you do need to think about how you overcome certain of these challenges. And we'll start off with driver turnover. After 10 years in which turnover averaged less than 15% in the private fleet community, we saw that number start creeping up about 5 or 6 years ago. We're now averaging about 20% turnover and about 9 to 10 years of retention, which, depending on what portion of the industry you're looking at, could be very good. We're seeing some of the truckload carriers averaging 90, 100%. But it points to the challenge that many members of our members are facing, keeping the right people behind the wheel. Like I said, there's an awful lot of poaching going on, and we've got to be that employer of choice. We got to create a culture of retention. And that is, when you take a look at the average cost, the out-of-pocket cost for turnover, our members are averaging about $12,000. And I frankly think that number might be a little bit low when you start pulling in all the indirect cost of that, the customer service issues and that type of thing. So it's very important to get a handle on what's causing that driver turnover. And so why do drivers leave? As we take a look at things, we find the top three reasons are another driving job, because of discipline reasons, and because of retirement. Now, there's nothing we can do about retirement. People are going to move on, and they're allowed to. But my point here is that if somebody's leaving for another driving job or for disciplinary reasons, it's telling me that maybe that during our hiring process, our interviewing process, our screening processes, that there have been red flags raised that we should pay attention to that may indicate that somebody's more prone to leave for greener pastures or to become a discipline issue. So again, a great opportunity, I think, to rectify that situation because of the cost involved with turnover. When we take a look at another challenge we face, that is the average age of the driver population. This, you can see here on this chart that for the last 10 or 12 years, our average has been over 50 years of age for the average driver. And this presents challenges when it comes to safety and workers' comp. And we're certainly not getting any younger. So what we need to do as an industry, I think, is to start looking at ways to attract and retain a different pool of drivers, a younger driver population, if you will. So that's another challenge we face. And then when you take a look at the typical private fleet driver's job, it's really not a driving job as much as it is a customer service or a customer service ambassador role. The average private fleet driver spends only about 2/3 of their time behind the wheel, with the remainder of their, 52-hour week spent loading and unloading, yard movements, paperwork, inspections, and that type of thing. So again, it's a different kind of environment, in many cases, a very high touch environment that we're looking at filling those jobs. And another aspect, one bit of good news, I think, but something we need to continue to monitor and keep our finger on the pulse is And that is the average number of candidates that we have to screen to get a good driver. There right now, because of what's going on in the for-hire industry with the freight recession impacting that side of the business, private fleets have gotten a little bit better at playing in that hiring game, and they can afford to be a little bit more selective. But finding drivers may have eased, but finding those great drivers that we need has still remains to be a pretty significant challenge. And our members still screen on average about 13 drivers before bringing the right one on board. And looking at some other driver hiring statistics, the time to hire is improving too. Speed to hire is something everybody should be taking a look at, because if you're not moving quick enough, then somebody else is going to step in and poach that candidate. But you can't move too quick to forgo some of the options in terms of doing very good interviews, proper pre-screening, proper qualifications, and compliance methodologies. As you can see from the three charts on this slide, again, because the driver shortage is not quite as severe, you can see that our speed to hire is improving. However, big word of warning, we all know that driver shortage is going to be coming back, and we just don't know exactly when. So it's a good idea to use this time to get your processes and protocols down right. The challenge is that fleets in many cases lack the internal expertise to conduct many of these screening, hiring, and compliance initiatives. In fact, according to our survey, about 12% of these functions are outsourced. So if we take a look at really getting to know our drivers, that becomes more evident as we examine the pre-screening protocols being used by some of our private fleets to get a better picture of those drivers that we're putting behind the wheel. As you can see from the chart, various pre-screening methodologies like oral fluid testing for drugs is a fast-growing best practice and used by about 12% of our members. That same number use personality profiling, with about 21% using credit checks and more than a third of our members using functional capacity testing. But by far the leading pre-screening protocols used by our members are the PSP process, as well as felony background checks. The point is, the more we know about a candidate before they come on, the better we can avoid hiring mistakes that plague almost every fleet. And these screening processes, the challenge is they take time, focus, and expertise, and that can be a challenge to an internal staff. So if we take a look, where are private fleets looking for their new drivers? Well, we're all seemingly fishing in the same pool, and as I like to say, we're stealing from each other. The biggest source for new drivers for private fleets is other private fleets. Like I said at the very beginning, we need to protect our employees from being poached by others, and that's one of the big challenges. The other areas of recruiting come from for-hire carriers, and the caution here is that if you're hiring from another trucking company, you may be hiring somebody else's problem. So interesting, a little more than 1 out of 10 of our members has developed a recruit from within strategy, and 6% are working closely with driver training schools. The message here is that in a competitive environment for good drivers, we need to leave no stone unturned when it comes to looking for drivers. And so in conclusion, what I'd like to do is just kind of wrap all this up by saying the battle for talent, the best fleets are reconfiguring the job to be more appealing. They're developing good, effective hiring practices supported by compliance tools that ensure the right alignment between the candidate and the opportunity. They're offering exceptional compensation and benefits and increasingly good health and safety wellness programs. And finally, they understand that this has to be very personalized. There is not a one-size-fits-all solution to all this. Hiring the right person takes expertise, discipline, and attention to detail, and it requires an understanding that a driver's needs and motivations are likely to change over the course of their engagement with that company. And Kelly, I'll turn the program back over to you and be happy to answer any questions that we might have.
Thank you so much for taking us through these critical data points. I will say just reading the NPTC benchmarking survey every year is a highlight for me as a marketer. I'm always interested to know what's happening in this world. So thank you for putting that content together. It's also been a surprise to me for the 4 years that I have been in this industry that the number one challenge for private fleets has been consistently driver-related challenges. And I think what's most surprising about that to me is how much the market has dramatically shifted since 2020, 2021, when the driver shortage was so much more acute. Many people would argue today that the market is more lax, but still private fleets are struggling with the driver component of their operation, as your data really highlights. Um, and so with that, I'm very excited to welcome Todd Henson to the table to discuss how Howmet has landed on a different approach, leveraging Transforce to find, hire, screen, and employ their entire driver staff, essentially offloading the burden of driver recruitment, compliance, and safety to a specialized third party. So Todd, thank you for joining us. Welcome. Can you tell us more about Howmet and how you got here?
Sure. Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate that intro. Um, we actually are all the things that Tom was just talking about. So if you look at us as a medium-sized private fleet of about 100 drivers, I think we've just bridged the 100 mark, a little over 100 that are 100% contract in today's world. And we do have senior drivers that are 20 to 25 years of service with Howmet. So that bridge for us is pretty simple to keep lots of things on the road. You can see that we're 35% teams, and teams are a challenge. Hiring a driver is a challenge, but trying to hire team drivers, two guys or two gals that can get along in a truck, it presents itself a different challenge. And we're able to be nimble and flexible with a good partner like Transforce, and being able to hire the drivers that we need, the quality that we need to fill all the slots that we have. And we're doing all different types of things like reefers, dry vans, Conestoga flats, step decks. We run straight trucks. Some of those are reefers, some are dries, and cargo vans. We're pretty much running coast to coast. And with that, we also have 7 contract support personnel that support those 100 plus drivers on the road. So I do have Howmet personnel that function and have functions within the group, but we have a lot of contract personnel that manage a coast to coast 32 state carrier base, and that also includes Canada. So we do a lot of things that keep us nimble and quick to the organization, because our true customer is the internal part, which is Howmet Aerospace. So everything that I do is for the company itself. You can go to the next slide, please. This kind of just shows us a little bit about where we are. We're very centric to the East Coast. A lot of our plants, our legacy plants, are in the East Coast. So we're servicing those plants, plus a large vendor base that has developed around our centric plants. And then we have the Texas. We have a few plants in Mexico. We don't cross the Mexican border, but we do have several locations that we hit on the Mexican border where we drop freight and cross with a partner carrier. We do cross the border into Canada, and we do service our plants in Montreal. So we have a pretty wide and diverse geographical area that we're covering, which once again, with a national partner like Transforce, we can leverage their abilities on that nationwide scope and be able to find the quality talent we need, even in tough markets like California. We're able to find those drivers that we really do need. Okay, Kelly. So this discussion wouldn't be a discussion if we didn't talk about, okay, so what's good about it and what's bad. So let's go through what I would say are the pros to working in a contract envelope or contract relationship. We have an extensive support network that is a human resources department for manufacturing. And as such, we are a very good hiring agency, if you will, for industrial athletes and folks that work in our manufacturing departments. What we're not very good at is understanding the DOT regulations, understanding the hiring protocol, all the things that Tom walked us through as far as the things that you're going to want to look at as a private fleet. we look at different things. Sometimes they're the same. So when you're talking about a background screen or felony conviction kind of screen, yeah, it's going to be the same, but there's also a lot of nuances that take us in a different direction when you talk about a DOT hire. So we're just not really good or really set up to handle that. And the different locations that we work from, we may only have one or two drivers. Like in Rancho Cucamonga, California, I only have two drivers. So for that HR base there to manage those one or two drivers would be asking a lot. Where I can pull on TransForce to be able to manage that across all states, all regulations, help me work through what are kind of strange regulations to me being in Indiana when I need to provide different resources or different protocol as far as a hiring and also benefits package for somebody that works in the state of California, especially for DOT drivers. It's a whole different world. So pulling on their resources and their expertise in the field takes away an encumbrance to me and allows me to focus and be more nimble and flexible with my compliance group. So I kind of step away a little bit from HR and move to compliance, where my compliance group are the ones that are managing the driver base. And when you look at service fees, this is something that's long been kind of on my radar screen. It's like, okay, so I pay a service fee to TransForce, and sometimes this works both directions. And we'll talk about this a little bit as a con, but when you look at it from a pro standpoint, it's very comparable and very similar to what a full-time employee benefit package would be for me. So when I look at that, it's kind of a net neutral to my P&L. So it almost becomes a, why wouldn't I do this? It doesn't really make a lot of sense to have a lot of extra, what I would call overhead as far as human resources personnel, different people that would be able to manage the DOT process. It kind of narrows it down, and actually it may end up being a net positive when you think of it from the extraneous parts of my organization, that we don't have to do work and that we can do lay that work off onto TransForce, and we can focus on the true meat and potatoes of what we do. If our wheels aren't turning, we're not making money. And if we're not making money, then there's no reason for us to exist. And servicing our customer, again, if the wheels aren't turning, then I'm not servicing my customer. And then I got a couple of things there we can talk about as far as flexing to market condition. Again, the geographic area we've talked about already. Sometimes it's around a specific requirement, like tanker, hazmat. Maybe it's a Class B driver that I'm looking for. Again, these would all be what I would call stumbling blocks for our human resources department. They wouldn't understand that. They wouldn't understand why I would want a Class B driver. So I'd have to go through a whole bunch of stuff to make them understand why I would want a Class B and why it's different than hiring a standard Class A driver, and why we would want to make a differentiation. Where I can go to TransForce, and TransForce is like, yep, got it, no problem, underway. Expedited hiring. We're not necessarily a fast, we don't have a fast approach to hiring. Yeah, we may be an aerospace company, but it takes us a long time to get off the runway. And getting off the runway is the important part. We're not there. And so we do it over a long period of time. So to be nimble to the market conditions and transportation, we need to, it's kind of like a C-7A. If you've ever seen the military aircraft, how they touch down and take off like in one movement, it's kind of the same thing. We need that to be able to happen. We need to touch down, know we have a problem, know we have an issue, know we have a need, and we need to be able to take off in a moment's notice to be able to get a driver in a seat moving and those wheels turning and capital coming in. It also gives us more flexibility from a driver pay and accessorial standpoint. It would be harder if you think about organizations that have long and deep rules and regulations around pay and what you're paying people for. It's much easier for me to be able to flex my pay based on what I'm going to pay TransForce for that employee. and not be worried about what HR thinks or knows or has to deal with as far as my pay structure. And I can be more flexible and nimble to market if the market changes. As Tom was talking about, there's going to be another driver shortage. I fully believe that is true. And so staying ahead of the market is very key for me. So being able to change and react to what I see as a market condition under driver pay and not have to go through a lot of gyrations to explain to somebody why we need to change something and just be able to change it is very key to my market. Excuse me. So cons, I have a hard time talking about these as cons, so you have to bear with me. If it doesn't come off like I'm sounding like this is a negative or a net negative to the situation, it's because in most cases I've already vetted these to a point that I feel like they're probably not cons, and they may actually be strengths for me as an organization. But I think there are questions that I've had in my mind that say this could be a problem, and this may be a reason why I wouldn't want to be a fully contract employment base. A lot of times there's this stigma that, hey, we're contract, we're not hiring the best, or we don't have the best of the benefits. It's not a prestigious job. I don't really work for Howmet Aerospace. I work for Transforce. All the things that you can think of that maybe a driver would say. But in the end, I think it also provides a strength because we have the ability to move forward and do different things that we wouldn't be able to do if we were kind of boxed into a corner. And when we treat our drivers in the best possible way and we give them the notifications and all the accolades that they need to do their job well, we end up bringing them into the fold. And what ends up happening is they kind of lose that contract feel. They're no longer feeling like they're a contract employee. We roll them into the things that we give away. We roll them into days where we're feeding everyone in the building, or driver appreciation. We give lots of things away. We give cash away, things that make them feel like they're very important to the organization. And most of our plants see our drivers that way because they're their lifeline. They're the things that happen to them every day that keep their doors open. And so they're the raw materials coming in. They're the taking things out to their vendors. They're the on-time people that make their day go smoother and not more negatively. So when we show up on time and we're there every day, and we have the image of Howmet Aerospace as a whole, I think most of these things just kind of blend into the back. Every once in a while, you get one driver that feels this way or has issues, but for the most part, I think it blends into the back. When you think about pay, I always think about this, and this was always my stumbling block personally. When I looked at it, it's like, wow, that markup, I pay a markup. So it sure would be nice to pay the guy what I'm paying him, not have the markup. But what you forget about is what you put into a benefits package for a full-time employee. And when you realize that those two kind of almost overlay each other so that it's a net probably no change at all, or maybe net positive, it really rings the register for me, because now I have an HR team. I have a team that's capable of hiring and managing that whole DOT spectrum, and also have a team that's capable of making those drivers feel like they're a part of a good team, that this pay thing turns into something that I can actually pay drivers more, can be more nimble. I can pay for accessorials. I can pay for wait time. I can build things into their schedule that make them better than I would be if they were full-time employees. And when drivers feel that way, then they actually feel like they are a part of the team. And we have a unique flexibility, I guess, as an internal fleet. I think most private fleets have this ability where we're more scheduled. So because we're more scheduled, drivers get more, they get more home time. Most of my guys and gals are back every other day. Some of them are home every day, but Even the long haul drivers will go across the country and be back in 2 to 3 days. So because we're running teams, and so because of that, they have that home time flexibility. A lot of them are off on weekends. They get a lot of what I would call perks as a private fleet that allow them to really feel like they're part of this team, and they get to factor into our wins. So when we do well, they know it and they're doing well. Sometimes, it could be like you feel like there's a loss of cohesion in the workforce. But again, when you treat your drivers right, you give them the right home time, you give them the right feel to where it's almost like a normal job, even though they still do a lot of miles on the road. It makes it a little bit different. But when you make them feel that way, I think this goes away too. There is a cohesion to the workforce. I think we get drivers that want to help each other. They're looking out for their fellow driver. We have a lot of drivers that come in and off the same dock, and they'll set each other up. It's not a thing as to how I can get one over on the next guy because I can get in and get out and leave him the problem. I don't see that. I see these guys being actually very cohesive together. So overall, I think it turns into a very good workforce. And with a partner like Transforce allows us that ability to flex, do the things that we need to do. They're 100% behind us. They're standing with us, and they're moving forward with us when we need something to move forward. I think that's it. Back to you, Kelly.
Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing your insights and experience with us. I think it's been a little over 10 years of partnership, and we grow from you. So thank you for your leadership and for sharing this with us.
Absolutely.
I think you left us on a really interesting note of the perceived issues of a 100% kind of contract-based driver workforce, and how you've really handled this as a business and kind of made us a great strategic partner. So I think it's a perfect segue to Lisa, who'll talk to us about developing these relationships and discuss what other businesses like Howmet would want to look for in a partner, but also internally in your operations to understand if this type of model or even a hybrid model of this could be beneficial to the organization. So Lisa, do you want to take us away?
Sure. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Todd. So when evaluating a partnership to help overcome the current driver challenges, it requires a strategic focus on several key operational areas that directly impact driver safety, satisfaction, and compliance. A strong partner, whether it's a staffing agency, a PEO, or third-party safety service, should offer a robust driver screening and qualification process, ensuring that all drivers meet DOT and FMCSA standards from day one. This will include your background checks, your license verifications, drug and alcohol testing, and a deep review of driving histories to minimize the risk and improve long-term retention. In tandem, the partners should enforce clear and consistent safety standards that align with your company's expectations and regulatory requirements. This includes maintaining up-to-date driver qualification files, random drug screens, and an informative safety and compliance updates. A proactive approach to safety training is also going to be essential. So look for a partner who offers reoccurring practical safety education tools to prevent incidents before they occur. That might include some defensive driving refreshers, fatigue management, or situational awareness programs tailored to your fleet's operation type. Also, effective issue management will also be crucial. Your partner should have systems in place to address incidents, complaints, and violations, and constructively with a clear escalation path and documentation trail. Finally, evaluate their compliance history and their safety record. You want to look for transparent reporting, audit preparedness, and a commitment to continuous improvement are all indicators of trustworthy long-term ally in navigating the complex realities of today's trucking industry. You want to look for a true actual partner. Kel, next slide, please. So, is a driver managed service right for you? When we talk about solving today's driver challenges, it's not just about fulfilling seats or checking boxes. It's about stepping back and asking a bigger question. Is the way we've always done things still working? And if it's not, is there a better way? Many issues we all face today, like high turnover, inconsistent driver screening, safety concerns, or compliance gaps, aren't just operational problems. There are signs that the internal teams might be stretched too thin or stuck in outdated systems. And that's where a third-party partner can truly help and make a difference, not just taking tasks off your plate by helping you work smarter, faster, and safer. So ask yourself a few of these questions. Are the driver shortages constantly slowing down your operation? Is recruiting and onboarding new drivers eating up more time and resources than it actually should? Are you struggling to keep up with demand spikes? Are you able to scale up and down in a volatile environment? But let's talk about also cost. Have you actually looked at your entire cost, like Todd said earlier, about managing the drivers in-house? It's not just wages, it's also benefits, PTO, training, recruitment, retention, and compliance fines. Would outsourcing give you a predictable cost structure that you can manage your P&L better to? Could it actually save you money in the long run? Then there's the compliance and safety portion. Are you confident in your current process for staying DOT and FMCSA compliant? Are you keeping up with safety training, drug testing, and certifications? If you're 100% sure, or if you're not 100% sure, or your team is overwhelmed, outsourcing may take the burden off your shoulders and reduce your risk. For an operational standpoint, think about the impact of sudden call-offs or unexpected resignations. Do you have a plan in place currently to run routes smoothly when that happens? Would having a pool of pre-qualified drivers improve your service or reliability? And are your internal teams spending too much time on things like HR and payroll instead of focusing on growth or a revenue generating position? Let's not forget about drivers themselves. Can you offer benefits, perks, and support in today's what drivers actually expect in today's market? Do you have the resources to invest retention programs or additional incentives? In many cases, staffing partners can actually provide better benefits, things like healthcare, 401k with a match, plus dedicated support, which will directly improve driver satisfaction and can reduce turnover. So really, it's not just about outsourcing. Rethink about how your business operates and ask, are we doing the things best we can do as possible? Or is it time to try something different that may add more value, stability, and peace of mind? A well-chosen partner just doesn't fill in the gap. They help you run stronger, more agile, and compliant operation from the ground up. Next slide, please. So you decide to do it. What would implementation looks like? Well, it starts with our team working together with your team to build a very detailed plan that fits your operation. We'll get your input from the beginning and make sure that the entire process is smooth and positive for both your team and your drivers. From kickoff to onboarding, everything is tailored to your specific needs. We'll keep you in the loop every step of the way. There is no surprises. It's a straight path forward. After implementation is complete, the support doesn't stop there. You'll have ongoing white glove service that includes regular quarterly business reviews, helping manage compliance, and support with maintaining your driver qualification files. We are here as a true partner, not just during the rollout, but for the long haul. Switch slides, please. This slide is the annual cost comparison. So when you're comparing your current cost to the cost of outsourcing, it's important to look beyond just the hourly rate or salary. Think about all the hidden costs that come when managing in-house, things like recruiting, job ads, marketing, just to get the drivers through the door. Then there's software that you're using to track everything, the cost of health benefits, workers' comp, and the time and resource it takes to manage the claims if something goes wrong. Plus all the ongoing admin tasks, payroll, compliance, paperwork, onboarding, and HR support. It actually adds up to pretty significant costs. So when you're evaluating the real costs, make sure you're looking over at the full picture. Sometimes outsourcing can give you more predictability, fewer headaches, and even save you money in the long run. And with that, I want to pass it back to you, Cal.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Todd. Such a great panel of speakers today. A lot of expertise in this room, dare I say. Maybe with my 4 years, we're just over 100 combined. Dare I say it? I might. All right. With that, I will go ahead and start taking questions from the audience. And we've already had a few pop in as we started this session. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in. Please feel free to continue using the Q&A at the bottom of the screen if you have more questions. And we will do our best to get to all of them in this Q&A. So the first one asks, okay, it says, one challenge that often comes up is co-employment. How do we structure that? So Todd, I'm gonna throw that one to you as the person operating the fleet.
Yeah, it's always something that's a big issue for us. Everyone's always concerned, and I've always been concerned about how we look at it and how the things we do, because transportation is something that's very live. Every day you're talking to drivers, we talk to drivers. So to say that TransForce is going to supervise all 100 of my drivers is not very functional. It's not really going to happen. They're not going to know everything that happens every day. So my take on this is I think we always end up in a co-employment situation. Litigation that's out there today would say most attorneys are going to end in that bucket where we're going to be shared co-employment. So no matter which way you look at it, I think there's going to be some of that's going to fall into the co-employment bucket. I know we try to stay out of it as much as we can. And TransForce is a really good partner for us by managing drivers and having agents that manage drivers well. But in the end, we also have interactions with drivers from our staff that says we still control their actions. We supervise them. But having a 50-50 contract and full-time employee, Howmet full-time employee staff also helps me separate that a little bit, because I also have some contract employees that are supervising TransForce employees. So it's your employee supervising one of my employees, which really works to me well. But I still think we're going to end up in the bucket in a litigation situation where we're going to have co-employment situations. I just don't worry about it as much as I used to. I think it's something that you need to be cognizant of it and understand it a little, but just not worry about it.
Thank you, Todd. The next question is actually also for you. It's, what were some early wins or operational improvements Howmet saw after deciding to work with a third-party provider for drivers?
I think my biggest win on that one is the human resources piece. So understanding that I can back away from that a little bit and not have a full-time staff of human resource people that are dedicated to DOT employees, because I think that's what it would take. Being able to pull on the expertise that is TransForce and taking all those wins that you've had and laying them over to my business, so I don't have to worry about it. And I can take away a lot of that stuff and just let my compliance specialist be able to manage their on-road compliance and not worry so much about getting them to the point that they're on the road. So you manage that piece. I can help manage when we're on the road. But you still do a lot of that too, because you're doing the drug screening. You're doing a lot of that kind of stuff that helps me focus on what's really important to me in my business, which is turning the wheels and going from plant to plant, moving materials, products, parts, whatever it is, making sure they get there in a timely manner.
Wonderful. Thank you. The next question we have is, how do internal silos between HR and operations prevent private fleets from solving their driver staffing issues more effectively? Tom, I'd be interested to hear from you on this one. I know that you work with a lot of different teams in the private fleet space. So this might be something you hear about more often.
Yeah, I think that part of the challenge, and I think that's a really excellent question, is so many companies are built upon these functional silos, and trying to have other, whether it's operations or sales, understand what the private fleet roles and more importantly, what the constraint is, right? We can do marvelous things as a private fleet, but there are constraints upon that. There are hours, driver hours of services. There are all the various compliance issues that we have to deal with. And there's an expense associated with being all things. So yeah, customer service is the number one reason why we exist. But part of that is at what price do we want to be customer centric, right? That's really becomes the essence of it. As a private fleet manager, I think the responsibility is to help convey what those opportunities to work together better are, the more time we have to do things. I actually had one fleet that, their sales department was guaranteeing overnight delivery when the customer wanted next week delivery. So it's about good, healthy communication too, in terms of that. And I think Todd identified a lot of the opportunities that may exist within these silos. Oftentimes, the biggest one pertinent to this webcast, I think, is from an HR standpoint. Most of these companies are very good from an HR standpoint for their manufacturing operations, or they're not as conversant. They may not have the level of expertise when it comes to the DOT compliance piece.
Yeah, it's a great point. That's funny about the next day delivery versus the expectation of a week. The next question is, sometimes updating our internal policies can feel overwhelming. Where or what would you suggest starting with as a first step to tighten up internal policies and procedures? Specifically talking about driver-related issues Tom discussed. So Tom, I think Tom, Lisa, maybe any of you actually would probably have some good insight onto this one.
I think I'll start. I'll start the ball rolling, and then Lisa and Todd can jump in. I think the most important element is to really define what it is you're looking for in that driver job. And are there other ways to do that? And making sure that you have a very good understanding, and then establishing a very good interview grid so that you're making sure that you're not just rushing to hire. You're not making a mistake in hiring somebody that you think is going to do the job, but actually will do that job, and then continuing to hold them accountable as they go through that. That would be my starting point.
Yeah, I think also you have to remember policies and procedures are going to be a continuous working live document. But with all the laws and regulations consistently changing, it's just going to be a policy that also continuously changes. So unfortunately, it'll never be complete. You'll have to just keep updating it and use it as a working doc.
Yeah, that's been very true. That's a good point, Lisa, because over the last, let's just say, if we look at the last 5 years, there's been a change in the market about every year. Something that's happened that's different. In 2019, we were seeing a lot of mass exodus via retirement, where aged drivers were leaving the market. Then what happened? We had the pandemic. Then all of a sudden, the whole thing shifts again to where your policy or your procedure. We started looking at drivers that were coming fresh out of school, or military-based drivers. Before that, we didn't want to see a driver that didn't have 3 years of experience. So we had to shift, and we had to move and understand that, yeah, there's a risk to moving there, but overall, it was a good thing for us because we're still able to find some drivers. And we have a few drivers that have stood the test of time. So if you look from 2020 to 2025, we still have some guys that are 5-6 year now veterans for us that either came out of military service and just had a military driving record, or came fresh out of driving school, which was something we never did before. We don't do as much of it now. We've kind of backed away from that, and we went back more to experience. But I think there's going to be a coming time where we're going to move back. I think we're going to go back to looking at either military or driver school based employment.
And I'll just add to that, Todd. I think one of the things, regulations change, the market conditions change, but drivers individually change. And, somebody that's 30 years old can do an awful lot when it comes to fingerprinting the freight, offloading it, those types of things. Even, dropping the landing gear that maybe somebody in their 50s, 60s, 70s can't do. So I think we've got to tailor those jobs and make reasonable accommodations, and also conduct training throughout to make sure that the right attitude, the right value structure continues to be productive.
Yeah, that's a good point. And obviously, with technology continuously being introduced into our industry at this point with the new drivers, your policy is going to have to continue to be updated as well.
Yes,
100%.
agreed.
Well, we are 5 minutes over. I want to say thank you to our speakers today. Thank you to everyone who came. I hope we've answered all of your questions. I will be sending out resources, as already mentioned, following this webinar, so you can expect them in your inbox by tomorrow. Just want to thank you all for coming. And if you have additional questions for any of the speakers today, you'll have my email address. You've already received emails from me confirming your registration, so please feel free to reach out to me. And we look forward to continuing this conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.